Man, I definitely know it's a long day when I'm sitting here and I can't figure out why I'm not live, and it's because I didn't hit the go live button. Yeah, that's wild. Um, yeah, so I was gonna do this with T Mid, but T Mid is MIA at the moment. I can't get a hold of him, so I don't want to drag this out. I definitely want to talk about this, but I kind of, I want to keep it quick and concise because I want it to be something that people can watch in the future and still get some value from. So I'll definitely keep an eye on the comment section as best I can. Y'all know I'm not the best at that. And I tried to use my new M1 and I forgot that the Canon webcam software doesn't work with the new M1 Max, which is unfortunate because when I use my other 13-inch and I have to use Chrome because StreamYard only works in Chrome, that thing be sounding like a jet engine getting ready to take off. So it sucks. So I gotta find a better solution. But anyway, I just got back from Columbus, Ohio this morning, and I was in town. What's up, Charles? Yeah, bruh. Hey, let me tell you, Charles. When I tell you it's been a hell of a week, oh my goodness, there's a lot to unpack. There is a lot to unpack. So I was in Columbus, Ohio for a surprise birthday party for a childhood friend of mine, somebody that I basically know my whole life. And so, of course, it was a no brainer that I was going to drop what I was doing to be able to make it to that surprise party. And so, since since there's been like a lot of flight cancellations because the party was on a Saturday. So since there had been a lot of flight cancellations like the past few months, especially on the weekends, I didn't want to take the chance of having a flight cancellation. So I decided to. Charles, by the way, can you let me know if my audio is good? By the way, this is my first time going live with my actual real mic. So if you could just do a mic check for me and let me know that the mic sounds good. So because of all of the flight cancellations, I was nervous about flying on the weekend. So I decided to fly during the week. So I flew out on a Wednesday, flew home on a Wednesday. So that way I could minimize the potential for me to have a missed flight or cancel flight or anything like that because I wanted to make sure I made it back for the party. So I hadn't been to Columbus in quite some time. That's where I'm from. That's where I moved from when I moved to LA. But I really haven't been back to Columbus, but just a couple times since I've been gone. So I figured, all right, since I'm going to be there for a week, what's up, Hassan? I figured since I was going to be there for a week, I would try to get a bunch of content creation in. Like I would make the most of the trip instead of just having downtime. Because I mean, I had that party. I had a couple other appointments that I had to tend to, a handful of business things, but I had a lot of downtime because I mean, I was there for basically 7 days. So I had a lot of downtime. So I'm like, okay, let me try to get in as much content creation as I can just to capitalize on the trip. So, and I'm gonna be looking at my phone because I had some notes just to make sure I touch on everything. So that was kind of why I took the trip, and that was the plan. Like it was, I was going to reach out to models, get a bunch of stuff set up. Like I was, the surprise party was on a Saturday. I had a couple things on Sunday, and then some stuff sprinkled in. But the plan was to try to get in at least two photo shoots every day that I was there. So that way I would get YouTube content, I would get, content to be able to post on social media, all of that stuff. So that was the plan going into it. And I was hopeful because like the week leading up to me flying out to Columbus, I had already started reaching out to models, and I'm gonna get to that in a minute on, what my approach is for reaching out to models and how I handle all that stuff. So, I had already reached out to some models, was kind of getting some things set up. So flying into Columbus, I was feeling good. I kind of had some dope shoots that I was working on, getting lined up. So like everything was looking good. So to segue into that, let me first talk about like what the approach is for me, looking for models. Now, of course, the easiest way to look for models is Instagram, right? Like you use hashtags. So I went to Columbus models, hashtag Columbus models, and I basically look for models that have a decent portfolio on Instagram, or I look for models or I look for photographers in the Columbus area, and then I'll scout their Instagram stuff to try to find models that way. Because sometimes photographers don't necessarily they don't hashtag Columbus models. And Columbus models, sometimes you'll get stuff from like Columbus, Georgia, and other places. So I basically use the two, and I'm just looking for somebody that, has a little bit of work on their page, because it's like when I'm doing these collaborations, I really don't want to have to work with people that don't model at all, or don't really have a lot of experience, because like I kind of want them to be easy, if I'm being honest. You know what I'm saying? It's like I have client stuff where I have to work. Like when I do these collabs, I don't necessarily want them to be a lot of work. So I try to look for models that kind of have some sort of experience, got some good work on their profile. I don't really care in terms of like they following and stuff. Typically, if they have like a bigger following, I don't always reach out to the people that had a bigger following, just because, as most of y'all know, I don't be posting on social media as much as I should. So I don't have anywhere close to a big following. So sometimes I feel like the models, if we can call them that, but we'll call them that, the models that have a bigger following typically frown upon the people that have the smaller following, because they think that, we're just trying to work with them just to get the exposure, which is not the case for me at all, right? Like I don't, like, exposure is not my number one priority. Like my number one priority is creating great content. Like that's my intent. And then if it happens to get put in front of more people, cool. Okay. So typically what I do, if I find a model that, has a look or a style, or they've got some solid work, I basically just comment. Now that was something that I got from T-Mid, because I used to just DM them, and over time he just kind of realized that, hitting them in the comment, you get a bit of a higher response rate. Now, one of the mistakes that I think I made when I did that was that in my thought process, when I did the comment, I tagged the person in the comment, because I thought that would drive more attention to the comment. Because if I could backpedal for a minute, I try to find a picture to comment on that is indicative of the type of photo session that I want to do. So to put it into perspective, if I went to a model's Instagram and like the first post that she has is like her in a swimsuit, or, her in something risque, I'm not anti doing swimsuit or risque stuff, but when I'm reaching out to a model from another city saying, hey, I'm gonna be in your city, you want to work, I don't want to comment on that type of picture, because they're going to assume that that's the type of content that I'm trying to have them create. So that's going to lessen the chance that they're going to want to work with some random person, especially a person that doesn't have a huge Instagram following, doesn't post a lot of stuff on Instagram. The last thing I want them to think is that, hey, I'm in town, I just want to try to shoot you half naked. So I typically try to find a picture that kind of fits more of what I'm trying to shoot and something that's a little bit more conservative, right? Like even if once we start having discussions, maybe we go to the swimsuit route, that's fine. But I try to find something that's a little bit more conservative. So when I was doing that, because sometimes these pictures would be a little bit older, I tagged the people in the comment. And in the comment, I basically just said, hey, I'm going to be in your town, or I'm going to be in Columbus next week. I'm just looking for, a model to shoot with. Are you interested? It's a simple comment like that. Like, it doesn't have to be anything crazy. And I basically copy and paste this in 24 model profiles that I find. Like, it ain't no point in spending time writing a novel. Like, they're not going to read it. So I just try to get to the point in like the most respectful way. But where I think a mistake that I made was that in that comment, I tagged them because I thought that that would help bring visibility in the notification to that comment. Well, lo and behold, I didn't realize that Instagram, in their infinite wisdom and stupid things that Instagram chooses to do, when you leave a comment on a post and you tag the person, it DMs them that you tag them in a post. And so at that point, I don't know, because I actually never talked to anybody that I was able to get in contact to. I don't know if if it sends that DM, if it still notifies them that they have a message, or if it basically turns the comment into a DM. Well, what happens when you DM somebody that doesn't follow you? It goes into the request folder. So, I didn't realize that until after I had probably dropped, 25, 30 comments. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to go back and redo all that stuff. So it's like, whatever. So that typically is the approach. It's all Instagram for the most part, because that's just the easiest way to find people. Now, William had mentioned Model Mayhem or similar sites. I have not used Model Mayhem in ages. I know it's still around because I still get emails from it in a very old email account that I check like once a year. So I know it still exists. I don't know that any models, like modern day models, still use them. And a lot of the Instagram models, they're not like true models, which I'll touch on that a little bit too, because I think that plays a factor as well. So I didn't use anything like Model Mayhem. I didn't go through any modeling agencies because it wasn't that serious. So I basically just, hit Instagram. Now, in terms of doing that, I would say if I had to give a number on, on the ratio of how many people I reached out to versus how many people I got a response to, I would say it was less than 10%. So from the time that I started reaching out to models, which was roughly a week to a week and a half before I left, all the way through yesterday, because I will talk about that too in a minute, so hang tight. So from the week and a half up until yesterday, I probably left maybe 40 comments or so, and I think I would still say that hit number was 10 to 15% of getting responses back, which I think we do have to go into it being realistic, in that first of all, a lot of these Instagram females, they probably get a lot of comments, they get a lot of DMs. So, you can't expect all of them to want to work back with you. And, I'm very much aware of the fact that, number one, I don't have a big Instagram following. So I know that, if I'm reaching out to a model, if I had, 25,000, 50,000, 100,000 followers, they're going to be way, way, way more likely to respond to me than me having 300 followers, right? Nah, man, I can't control the focus, Daquan. I gotta use my laptop my laptop thing because the uh, the Canon webcam software doesn't work on the new M1 Max. So it's not that it's focusing on this. It's just that's just the nature of it's closer to the thing. So that just is what it is. Even if I move it all the way, that's not going to change the focus on my face. And when you do StreamYard, it's only 720p, so it's not going to be crisp. That's just the way it go. So yeah, you know what I'm saying. So I'm very much aware that it's like having a smaller channel or having a smaller Instagram following and not posting a lot of content. So it's not like when you go to my Instagram, there's all of these pictures and stuff. I get it. Like I'm not going to get the same response rate as somebody that has a bigger following or somebody that has a lot more work. So I totally understand that. So I wasn't expecting to get like a crazy number back. Okay. So here's where it gets interesting, and it gets a little frustrating. Let me see. I looked up city models in IG and look in the recent tab and asked if they want to work together when I'm in that area. Yeah, Winston. So yes, that is basically the approach. And I think that is the most effective approach, to be honest. I mean, unless you were doing something to where you had a big budget and you could go through a modeling agency. Like if I was going through a modeling agency, I mean, I would have, everything would have worked out exactly, but I also would have been paying top dollar for that. So, it kind of comes with the territory. And Code Tap, you are exactly right. I do need to get a capture card of some sort because StreamYard wreaks havoc on my 13-inch laptop, so I need to be able to use my bigger one. But since Canon can't get their act together, I got to get a capture card. 100%. I'm definitely gonna do that. So here's where it got interesting. Okay, so there was a few different things that essentially transpired that this just kind of blew my mind. So I'm going to try to start with the first and work my way through. So definitely sit tight and listen because it's just stuff that just didn't make any sense to me. Okay, so for that 10%, when I reached out to those folks and I'm like, hey, you want to shoot? And they, I get a response back. The typical response is like, yeah, I'm down. I mean, in to make it simple, sometimes there's a little bit more words in that, but to keep it simple, they would respond back and they're like, yeah, I'm interested. Now, you would think, okay, if I comment on your picture and I'm like, hey, I'm in town, do you want to shoot? You see that comment or you see that message that Instagram sends and you choose to respond to that message and you're like, yes, I'm interested. And I believe, I can't remember for sure, but I believe in most of the comments, like I indicated when I was going to be in town. Like I was like, I'm going to be in town next week. So again, I was doing it, a week ahead of time. So I was like, I'm gonna be in town next week, through that following Tuesday, right? So I'm giving them a parameter so that way they have an idea, as to when I'm going to be in town. So, that you can't really say if you want to shoot or not if you don't know when somebody's going to be in town. So you give all that information, they respond back, they're like, yeah, I'm down to shoot. So you're like, okay, cool. So then I respond back and I'm trying to work out the details. You know what I'm saying? Like, what's your availability? Do you have a specific vibe or concept in mind, or you down for ideas, typical things that you would ask a model to get the dialogue going, because just saying like, do you want to shoot? Yes, that's only the beginning of it. Now you got to start working out the details. There's a lot of details involved to be able to actually make that shoot happen. So there were so many models that responded back and said, yes, they were interested. And then when you start to have that dialogue to try to get the details going, you get no response. No response. And it's kind of confusing because, again, these are people that have reached out to you first, essentially. Like, yes, I did leave the comment. So that was the initial interaction, but they chose to respond back. And then it's like, okay, now I'm responding back to try to work out the details and you get nothing. They go ghost. And then you see that they're not only not responding to your post, but then you see that they're posting stories and stuff on Instagram. And it's just kind of like, you know, I'm still sitting over here waiting for a response. Meanwhile, you posting all sorts of stuff on Instagram. And that was the reason why, if you guys saw Mid's reel the other day, that was kind of the cursor behind it, because we both were talking about it and we both experienced the same thing. He experienced it when he was in Louisville, and I experienced it in Columbus. So let me check on the comments so I can stay on top of it. Would it have been better to comment or DM on your business account versus personal? Just asking. The reason, so I don't think it makes a difference, to be honest. I don't think the account that you message from is that it, like, I don't think it carries that much weight. I do typically have more work on my business account, but that's kind of a tough one, Chris, because messaging from a business account can kind of imply that you would be charging them something to work. Now, of course, you can work through that in dialogue, or you could mention that in your comment, but I try to keep the comment pretty vague because I want to work through the details offline. It's the same as I could go in every comment and offer to pay the model, but it could have been a model that would have been down to collaborate for free. Now, at the end of the day, I'm a business, right? So I don't want to pay money if I don't have to pay money. I would rather collab with the model and give them photos for their time versus me paying. So I wouldn't want to flat out come out and say I'll pay you. So kind of coming from a business profile, believe it or not, you would think that that would carry more weight. But I think for a lot of models, especially if they're not professional models, if they're not full-time models, if they're not like signed to an agency, I kind of think coming from your business profile would be a little bit of a turnoff, because it just seems a little bit too formal versus coming from kind of more of a personal or a playful profile that just kind of fits the vibe better. So that's the reason why I choose to message from my Toglife account versus my 125 account, if that makes sense. So a lot of these models over the course of the week, and it gets worse. Like, it's not even just they say they're interested and then they don't respond back. Like, it gets worse than that. Okay. So so I got in town late Wednesday night. So I initially had a shoot set up on Thursday with my god niece, which was cool. I kind of wanted to start the day off, or the week off, with something consistent, something that I knew like they were going to come through. So that went off without a hitch. So Thursday night, at that point, I was a little light on content. And now, mind you, that was Thursday. I was going to be in town through Tuesday. So I was trying to do shoots every day from Thursday through Monday. So, I was trying to think of concepts in terms of what shoots I wanted to do, because I really needed to decide, what models I was going to try to hire in, because that was definitely my plan. I had a budget for that. And then what models I wanted to try to collab with. So on Friday, I actually was able to connect with a model that Mid had through my way, because he had connected with her when he was in Louisville and was possibly going to travel to Columbus to work with her, but he didn't go. So he threw her my way and I reached out to her. Now, even for her, and she turned out to be a rock star. So if she watches this, or if I post anything on my social media, I'm going to big ups her for sure, because it did take a little bit of time before we eventually started the communication. I reached out and I think it took her like a day or two to finally hit me back. But once she did, she was down, she was committed. She went and bought an outfit for the shoot. We talked about concepts. It was dope. And then she did something later on in the week that I'm gonna touch on in a minute. There's so much stuff I'm gonna touch on in a minute, because I'm trying to there's so much stuff. I'm trying to keep it in chronological order so I keep up with it. So on Friday, I ended up shooting up with her, and it ended up being a dope shoot. It was a great shoot. We wanted to try to do a shoot in the rain because, with me being in Vegas, even though it's been raining a lot the past couple weeks, for the most part, being in Vegas and even when I was in LA, you don't get a lot of rain, right? So being in the Midwest, I'm like, if I could get a rain shoot in, that would be perfect. Now that was a shoot that I was willing to pay a model for. Now let me pause for a second and hit this stuff. If I pay for a model, she gets 0 photos for free. Bryce, I'm exactly the same way. And I actually reached out to a model and we talked about that. And I'm going to let you know how that conversation went. Winston, when you reach out to models, people to shoot, do you charge them? If I reach out to a model to shoot, I am not charging them 100%. I think that's equally as bad as a model reaching out to you to shoot, and then when you agree to shoot, they throw you their rate. It's like if you are asking someone to shoot, in my opinion, you can't turn around and try to charge them. I mean, that would literally be just as bad as you being at a restaurant, you order a burger, and the server is like, "Do you want fries with that?" And you say yes because obviously the notion would be that if they're asking and most places have fries come with their burger, you would think that the fries come with the burger. If you then get your bill and see that they charged you for the fries, that would make you feel some type of way. Like, well, first of all, it's pretty customary that if I order a burger, it comes with fries. That's number one. But number two, if you asked me if I wanted fries, you kind of had an implication that they were complimentary. But if they weren't, why wouldn't you tell me when you asked that there was a charge with those fries? Okay. And I don't want to hear the devil's advocate of, well, you should have asked. No, I shouldn't have, because 90% of places that you go to, unless it's a fancy restaurant, if you order a burger somewhere, it typically will come with fries, like at sit down joints. So when it comes to models, if I'm reaching out to a model and saying, hey, do you want to shoot? I'm not going to turn around and be like, if they say yes, well, here's my rate. That to me, that's just terrible business practice. I personally wouldn't do it. So just to answer that question. So the shoot that I did on Friday was great. And then at that point, again, I was a little dry because every day that I was in town, I was reaching out to different models. So I was going to hashtag Columbus models, looking at the recent, and basically anybody that I saw that looked like they had some model experience or they had a good look. And that's the reality of what we're doing. Okay. So like, I'm going to be completely frank because y'all know that's how I am. When you're looking to do a collab with somebody, you're typically looking for somebody that has a certain look. Because when it comes to me, if I'm going to do a collab, I typically want something that I can put on my portfolio. Now, that's not to say that I 100% will, but that is always my intention. If I'm going to do a collab with somebody, I need it to be something that I can put on my portfolio. So it's not just about me getting together with someone and shooting. It's me getting together with someone, having a concept, it being somebody that I think fits the look and can essentially do well with that concept. Like, I want to be able to get content that I'm happy with. And of course, I want them to be happy with it as well. But the reality is, it's like my needs come first. It's like, I'm not, if I can't do anything with the photo, it's not a good use of my time. So I'm looking for models that have a good look, have some sort of modeling experience. And typically, again, to be honest and frank, I'm looking for models that I feel like would be down to collab. So if I'm going through a profile and they're signed to an agency, they're not going to be the first tier of people that I'm going to reach out to, because if they're signed to an agency, more than likely you're paying for them. Sometimes you actually have to go through the agency, which is going to cost you even more money. Or if you don't, you're going to have to pay for them. If they're signed, unless you know them or you're bringing some concept to the table that is worthwhile for them, you're going to have to pay for them. So those are not going to be the first people that I typically look for. I'm looking for people that have a good look and it looks like they would work for do a collab. So every day I'm reaching out to models, to try to see if I can find people to work with, because I wanted to make sure that I had shoots lined up. So on Friday, I actually specifically reached out to a couple of models that I was fine paying for. Now, one of those models I wanted to do two shoots with. I wanted to do a pull shoot and I wanted to do a in the rain shoot. And I specifically picked this model because she had a really good look, strong jawbones. She was taller. So I just felt that she would fit the aesthetic of the pull shoot better. And because she had a lot of modeling experience, she was a full-time model. I wanted to get her for the rain shoot as well, because when it comes down to me paying for a model, I want a model that I essentially don't have to really direct. Like, I want someone that they can just get the shot, we can get what we need, and that's it. Because I'm going to be on a time frame. Most of these models are charging by the hour. And so I don't want to have to spend time coaxing and posing and all that stuff. Like, I want somebody that knows what they're doing. I can kind of give them some general direction and they jump in and they kill it. Okay. So when it comes to a shoot that I specifically want to do, like, again, I don't get rain in Vegas, so I wanted to do that. Pools in Vegas, like, yeah, I could go down to the strip, but that's a whole different ball game trying to do a photo shoot on a strip versus I was going to do this at her hotel complex, and it was a beautiful pool, beautiful. So I reached out to her, and I basically was like, I'm in town. I know someone that has used you before. I really like your work. Would you be interested in a shoot? Okay. And she responded back and she said, definitely interested. Would this be a paid shoot? And I said, absolutely. I can't remember exactly what my response was, but essentially I was like, absolutely. What's your rate? Now, she came back with, I'm a full-time model. My rate is $100 an hour. Now, for me, I've always said I don't mind paying for a model ever, okay? But you got to be bringing something to the table, right? Like, I'm not going to just pay an amateur any amount of money. Like, you have to be bringing something to the table. Now, her work was strong. It was strong. And in my honest opinion, she was worth $100 an hour, in my opinion. But for this particular trip, that was just above the budget that I had set aside for models, because typically for a well-experienced model, especially in a location like Columbus, Ohio, that isn't overly big in terms of modeling and fashion and that sort of thing. I mean, that's no knock on Columbus, but it's not an LA, it's not a Chicago, it's not, one of the, a Miami, where it's like that scene is very hot and you pay top dollar. So for Columbus, $100 an hour was a bit much. So I basically negotiated to bring that down to $80. I said, I want to do this pull shoot and I want to do this rain shoot. Would you be okay doing that for $80 an hour? So 1 hour for the pull shoot, 1 hour for the rain shoot. And she agreed to that. So I was like, okay, cool, perfect. So at that point, I was like, okay, what's your email address? Let me send you over my model release so that way I can make sure you're okay with it first before we start moving forward and I start doing a mood board for you and all of these things. Let me make sure you're good with my model release first. So I sent that over. She was good with it. We worked through all those details. So I kind of set that on the side because I was essentially looking at the forecast to try to figure out when we could get this rain shoot in, because obviously, like, I need the rain to do a rain shoot, and I didn't want just like a trickle of rain. Like, I wanted a downpour. Like, I wanted it to be very obvious that we were going to be shooting in the rain. So I set that aside and I'm like, okay, cool. So the hotel room that I was in, it was a beautiful hotel room, like beautiful hotel room. It was big and it had some of the most beautiful natural light coming in that room possible. It had a huge window and then it had like this little shade that came down that was just the perfect diffuser. So the hotel room was great. To see if I could get not even necessarily a boudoir shoot, but I'm like, I want to get some sort of shoot in the hotel room. Now, obviously, when I say that out loud, you could understand that there's going to be some complications trying to get a model that you don't know and that you're just hitting up on Instagram to agree to come to your hotel room. Now, in my opinion, a hotel room is safer than saying come to my house, but there was a couple models that I talked to in Columbus that kind of felt different, and they was like, yeah, it's more sketchy to come to a hotel. I don't agree with that, so let me know what you think in the comments. I think I would rather meet someone at a hotel where there's other people, and if I scream, people will hear me, versus going to someone's house and they could lock me up in their basement. But anyway, so I wanted to get that shoot in. So the girl that I work with on Friday that we had a dope shoot, I reached out to her and I was like, I need a huge favor, because she had mentioned at the end of our shoot, she was like, do you have any other shoots lined up while you're here? And I'm like, a couple, but I'm basically trying to shoot the whole time. Okay. And for anybody that's coming in that's new, it's not that my focus is off. It's just because I'm having to use my computer, and just because this is closer, that's just the nature. And this is in 720p. So that's that. So I know how to focus. So I reached out to her and I'm like, I need a favor. I was like, at the time, I think that was, I think it was Friday afternoon. I was like, I'm looking for a model to shoot tomorrow, which was Saturday, between 12 and 4. And then I was like, I'm looking for a model that would be down to do a boudoir shoot between 10 and 6, because I wanted to obviously do the boudoir shoot during the day because I wanted the natural light. Like, that was the only reason I wanted to do it in the hotel room. Like, if I was going to have to just strictly use flash, I really wasn't interested in it. Like, I wanted to be able to use that natural light. And then there was a third one. I can't remember what else I was. So she was gracious enough to post that to her story. And she spoke very highly of me, which was awesome. She was the best. And so from that, I got a ton of requests. So as a sidebar, something that can really help you a lot is that if you go to one of these cities and you work with a model and you have a great session, definitely utilize that model to post on her Instagram to essentially try to get you work as well. Because now what that gave me was, it was somebody that vouched for me. She basically was like, I just worked with him. He was very, very respectful, very polite, very patient, all these things. So it basically helps ease other people's worries. So instead of you just reaching out to them directly, when it's somebody that they already follow and they're saying, hey, I've worked with this photographer just the other day, he's great, if you want to do some work, reach out. So it was perfect. So off of that story, I probably got, I don't remember the exact number, but it had to been like 7 or 8 messages, like from different people, which I thought, like, okay, this is great. Like, I got all these people reaching out. Like, I'm going to have plenty of content. Everything is going to be good. Boy, was I wrong. I was definitely wrong. Now, a side note, one thing that I noticed with that, now I always thought that when you send a message and it goes in the request folder, and I feel like it used to be this way at one point in time, but maybe it isn't that way anymore. But when something goes into the request folder, I always thought that it went into the folder and you never knew that you had anything in there until you actually clicked on the folder, and then you would see that you had messages. At least for me, that was not the case. Like, as soon as I went to, my little DM area, I saw that I had 8 requests things in there. Like, it was super visible. So I knew that I had requests. I didn't have to click it and then see it. Like, there literally was a notification next to the request. So when you send something and you think like it just got lost in the request and they don't know it's there because they're not looking in the request, they probably know it's there. They probably have looked at it. They just didn't accept it. So it just doesn't show that they read it. So anyway, I go in there. There's a ton of responses of people like, yes, I want to work. Now, one thing that I didn't mention in her post that is super, super important and critical that I mentioned is that in her post, she specifically said the days and the times that I was looking to work with these models. Like it wasn't just this random, hey, do you want to work with this model? He's great. Hit him up if you want to work with him. No, like it was specific dates, specific times, specific things that I was looking for from these models. Okay. Specific stuff. So in terms of the boudoir thing, I had I had three people hit me up. Three people hit me up. The one person honestly didn't really fit the look that I was going for, and she wasn't an experienced model. And again, like with the boudoir thing, like I do boudoir stuff, but not enough to have the skill set to be able to work with someone that has never modeled before and is a more curvy woman. Like I understand my strengths, but I also understand my weaknesses. And I'm just like, yeah, I am not in a position to really be able to handle that well. And I really wanted to knock this photo shoot out the park because again, the hotel room was beautiful. The light was beautiful. So I'm like, I really want to get some good stuff. So that first person, I ruled that first person out. The second person that hit me back, great look. She was beautiful. She was beautiful. She was brown skinned. I was like, this is perfect. Like, let's make it happen. So she hits me up. She's like, I'm interested, all this stuff. So then I respond back and, I'm kind of trying to work through the details. Like, what's your availability? Like, this is the time frame that I'm looking to do it. I'm like, did the person share the mood board? Because I had a mood board because I wanted people to know, like when I'm doing boudoir stuff, like I don't do like the lingerie stuff. Like I'm more of like a t-shirt towel type of person, like where it's just a little bit more sensual and not just like your typical lingerie. So I was like, did this person send you the mood board? If not, I'll send it to you, whatever. So I send that back and I get nothing. I get nothing. There's no response. I'm waiting. I'm waiting. Mind you, I had a window that I was trying to get this done. So I'm waiting. Nothing. And then all of a sudden, this person posts a story. And that's the story of our lives. Is that you are communicating with these models, and then all of a sudden communication stops, but then you see them active on social media. And I know the first thing that somebody would think is that, well, is it something in your response that you're saying that is turning them off? And I can assure you the answer is no. Like if I had the time or means to literally show you every response that I sent to these models, I could prove to you that it's like there's nothing inappropriate. It literally is just trying to work through the details. Like if you're saying I'm interested in shooting tomorrow, my response is going to be, okay, bet, that's great. What's your availability? And like, do you have a vibe in mind, or are you, open for suggestions? Those are normal questions that you would ask somebody that says, yes, I'm interested in working with you. So this person that I was super excited about, because I'm like, she has a great look, great body, brown skin. I'm like, she is going to be perfect for this shoot. So I was super excited. Not gonna lie, hopes was hella up because she agreed to the boudoir shoot. Like I didn't even have to do any work to try to get her there. Like she was down to do it. So I was like hella excited, super excited. So I'm not getting a response back, And then I see this story. So I go click on the story and I realize that she's not even in the state, like not even close to in the state of Ohio. Like she was down south. So at that point, I'm just thinking, okay, if she's not even in the state, there's like, how was she planning to do this shoot today? So then I respond back and I'm just like, well, bummer. It looks like you're not even in Ohio. And she responded back and asked, what state I lived in or where I lived. And I'm like, Vegas. And then I haven't heard back from her. That was, that was like Saturday. I literally never got a response back at that point. So I'm just like, what was the point of even agreeing to do the shoot? Like a shoot that you knew the day and time frame that I was looking for a model, you agreed to do it, and then you're not even in town. That happened twice. It happened twice. That someone responded back and they're like, yes, definitely interested, but they weren't even in town. So I don't know if they didn't fully look at the story, read it all, just saw that I was looking for a model. I don't know. So basically, okay, so then those two things fizzled out. So now I'm back to not having the boudoir shoot. Now, there was a lot of that happened, but I don't want to turn this live too long. So I want to fast forward to the paid models because I know there's going to be people that would think, then you should just pay for a model. Like if you really want this stuff, pay for a model. Okay, so we gonna talk about that. Before I do that, let me make sure I didn't miss anything in the comments before I go to that. Let's see, EW Images. If I reach out, it's generally for a collab, never paid for a model, but thinking of it for certain ideas, but didn't know if I paid, no photos for free. Okay, so I wanna touch on that. Okay, I wholeheartedly feel that if you have a shoot that you specifically want to do, you have a vision, you have a concept, you want to make it happen, pay for a model. I will say that 10 times over because typically, even though, stay tuned because you're going to be like, really, stay tuned. But typically, if you're going to pay for a model, they're going to be more consistent. If you find the right model that you're paying for, they're going to have model experience. So they're going to help you execute that photo shoot better than just an Instagram model. And it's like at the end of the day, as photographers, we should be able to, pose our clients and do all of those things. I agree with that 100%. But I also think as photographers, if we can put ourselves in a position to make it easier for us, that is a great thing to do as well. So if I can hire a model that has experience and I don't have to coax them through everything, it makes sense for me to do that. I want my job to be as easy as possible. So if you have a shoot that you specifically want to do, you have a concept, I highly recommend paying. Now, when it comes to no photos for free for models that pay, that is a highly, highly, highly contested topic. It's been contested on my channel and on other lives that I've done. It is a contested thing because there are people that feel like even though you're paying for the model, you should still give them photos because they would then in turn post those photos to their Instagram and that would be exposure for you. There are photographers that feel like you should at least give them the images that you edit because why not? You've edited them, so why not give them to them? There is no right or wrong way, to be honest. I choose not to give photos. And I mention that up front so the model knows what they're getting into so they can make a conscious decision. That's just up to me. I don't, that's just the way that I do business. Whether people agree or not, that's totally fine. Everybody can do it their own way. But I just wanted to mention that that's not the standard rule is not to not get photos. There's definitely a lot of photographers I know that don't, but there's an equal number of photographers I know that do. So just kind of keep that in mind. Okay. Smell Good Photography. Do you ever go to modeling agencies to do test shoots? Now, the reason why I have not really tapped into modeling agencies is because of the cost. Now, typically, if you have, so for in a general area, if you are paying for an experienced model, you can expect to pay anywhere from 50 to $100 or more, depending on your market and their demand and how good they are. But the average is somewhere between $50 to $100 per hour that you're going to pay for a model. If you go through a modeling agency, you can expect to pay double that because, of course, the modeling agency has to pay the model, but at the same time, they have to make money as well for doing all of the logistics, and they are a business. So there's overhead. If you know anything about business, you know that there's always overhead, and you're going to pass those overhead costs on to your client. So the other thing with modeling agencies as well is that you typically will have minimums as well. So it will be a little challenging unless you had a strong relationship with that modeling agency. It would be a little challenging to go in and say, I just need a model for one day or for 1 hour. That's just a little bit more work than what they would be willing to do. The typical is that you have to do a 2-hour minimum. So, if you had a $200 an hour rate at a 2-hour minimum, you're looking at $400. And for something that is essentially a collab, in my opinion, for my work, it's not worth that kind of money. If it is, go for it. Now, when you mention test shoots, I'm not overly familiar with test shoots. That might be something different. That may be something where the model or the agency is looking for photographers to kind of test out something with a new model that they want to hire. So that could be different. So if that's different, definitely educate me and everyone else, because I'm not that well versed in model agencies. I just recently went and sat down with a model agency a couple of months ago just to kind of develop a relationship and kind of open that line of communication. So I'm not very familiar with test shoots. So if that's something different, please educate me. Let's see. I'd ask if they had a bodyguard friend they could bring so they would feel safe. Now, when it comes to that, Charles, I don't voluntarily say that. Of course, I am 100% on board if they ask if they can do that. Now, the reason that I don't necessarily just throw that out there is because the reality is, and again, you guys know I'm real, I'm frank, and I'm really trying to give you guys like honest information and not just like stuff that just like people say to sound good or whatever. I typically don't want people to bring someone to the photo shoot because more times than not, it's either distracting or the model has a hard time getting out of their head and like just opening up and being free. Okay. When I do photo shoots, my number one rule and my only rule that I give to every single person that I do a photo shoot with is that you cannot think. And how I explain that is I say, if you're doing something and you feel like you're looking stupid or you feel like you don't look good, you're breaking my only rule, and that's you're thinking about it. If you don't think, you will just be free, you will be loose, you will try things. Not everything is going to look good, but that's okay. It doesn't have to. That is the art of photography, especially when we're collabing and we're doing these things and we have these concepts and these visions. 100% of the images aren't going to be home runs, and that's okay. We can strike out. But it's like if you're overthinking everything and you're trying to make sure that everything is in the right place and am I looking stupid? Am I doing it right? That's going to show in the photos. So I don't want my clients or my collabs to think about it. I want them to just be free, loose, and just have a good time. What I have found is that when people bring someone else, it essentially creates an audience effect, and it makes it more difficult for them to be free and not be in their head and not think about something, especially if it's a really close friend, if it's a boyfriend, if it's something like that. They're going to feel like they're looking stupid in front of that person. And subconsciously or consciously, it really affects them just letting loose and being free and having a good time. So I typically prefer that they come alone because I want them to just have a good time without feeling pressure of putting on a show for someone else. So that's the reason why I don't say it up front. I don't recommend it. But if any client, any person that I'm collabing with, if they ever ask if they can bring someone, I will 100% without hesitation say, absolutely, you can. My only requirement is that whoever you bring, I need them to add to the photo shoot and not take away from it. And what I mean by that is don't bring someone that's going to mess up the flow. Don't bring someone that's going to, be in my ear the whole time telling me, do this, do that. Don't bring someone that's going to try to dictate how you pose and what you should do. I don't want that. It's like, I don't want someone coming in and pretending to be photographer. It's like they can come and they can observe, but they need to just sit on the sideline and let the coach do what the coach does. So that's typically how I would handle that. Let's see. Models should have a chaperone they can call, but they got to keep safe the best way they know how, I guess. 100%. I think a big part of it. And there was a couple models that I work with in Columbus that I asked them, I said, what made you want to work with me? And the response was, that they looked at my profile. Believe it or not, most of them looked at my YouTube, which is really one of the biggest benefits of having a YouTube channel, is that people are able to look at my YouTube and really get a feel for the type of person that I am. Now, someone could argue that it's like, oh, you're doing YouTube, you're fake the whole time, and you could be a killer in your personal life. That is true, but that's typically not the case. Like what you see on YouTube for the most part is, how a person is. So people typically do their homework, and just in communication, you can kind of get a feel for the type of person that they are. And every shoot that I do, minus the shoot that I was wanting to do at my hotel room, every shoot that I'm doing it in a public place, and I give them the opportunity to pick the location. Is there a spot that you know of? Is there a spot that you've been wanting to shoot at? So I give them the opportunity to give me that information. We can shoot there if you want. If not, here are some places, but those places are always public places. I'm not taking them to somewhere secluded. I would leave that for someone that I've worked with before, someone that I've built a rapport with. Then we can start going to those places that are secluded or that they look sketchy. But I would never take a model that I'm working with for the first time to any place like that. I'm always going to go to a public spot so that they feel safe and that they feel comfortable. So that's typically how I would handle that. Let's see. Failure happened to me recently. She said her cat was sick. Maybe it was true, but I just think that they discard you if you aren't famous or well known. I'm going to touch on that in a moment. Yeah, I don't want to get too nasty. Got to pay for them. Just like we said, if I pay because I need the shoot done and it's done right, it's no longer content. That is correct, Bryce. I agree 100%. When we shoot with Instagram models, do you let them choose which images they want edited, or should you decide which images you edit, and how many edited images would you give them for free? That is a great question. Photographers do it different. Some photographers will pick the images that they get, others will allow them to choose. I always allow them to choose. Now, the way that I do collabs, for me, my collabs are no different than a paid client shoot. And that's the reason why I limit the number of photos that I deliver between 6 and 8. I used to do between 4 and 6, but just over time, I felt like offering someone 4 images for their time, it didn't seem very lucrative, and I didn't get a lot of hits back on that. So I essentially moved that to 6 to 8. And the reason why I keep that number low is because I edit those images the same way that I would edit images for a paying client. Because at the end of the day, I need to compensate them for their time. Okay. So if you have this model that's charging me $100 an hour, if they're collabing, I feel like I need to give them, in essence, $100 an hour worth of work. That's just me. And I don't want to have to be the one to say, these are the images that I'm giving you. To me, that's not fair compensation, because if I'm getting this content, I have access to all the images, and I have a model release that allows me to do whatever, obviously within reason, I can do whatever with those images. It isn't fair for me to then say, you're going to get the images that I want to give you. That's not fair to me. So I give them the opportunity. We agree on a number up front. And depending upon how long the shoot is and the rapport of the rapport that I have with the model, sometimes I may do more. So the model that I worked with on Friday, that was a rock star, she really helped me out. I would go 12 to 15 for her instead of the 6 to 8 because of what she did for me. So I basically will send a gallery. I would say, pick your 6, pick your 8, pick your 12, whatever. And then those images, I turn around and I edit those images to the same standard that I edit images for clients. Now, there are photographers, as I said, that will, number one, offer way less. There's photographers that may only offer 3 images or 5 images. There's photographers that will just pick the images and say, here you go. There's photographers that will only deliver to the person the images that they edit themselves for their social media or their YouTube or whatever. And that's totally fine. I'm not knocking that 100%. I just personally don't feel that that is proper compensation for a model. And at the end of the day, I want to develop a relationship. I want to be able to work with this model again, because as photographers, the best thing that we can have is repetitive collaborations with people, because it's hard to get. Like, think about a company. The most amount of time, effort, and money goes into marketing and onboarding new customers. Once they have a customer, it's a little bit easier to keep that customer. You just have to keep them happy. Once you have them through the door and they spend money with you the first time, it isn't that hard to keep them coming back. But it is difficult to get new people to come in, especially when you're having to take them from another store and have them come to your store and spend money. So for me, when I do these collabs, I want to do whatever I can to make sure that they stay with me, because then at least I know I have them. So when I'm over here struggling in the comment section in the DMs trying to find new models, I at least have some models over here that I've taken care of that, I just had a light come in from a company that I got to do a photo shoot on. I want to be able to have someone that I can just hit up and say, hey, I got to do a video on this light and do a review. Can you come through? I don't want to have to rely on going to the comments and trying to find a model that's likely going to flake, and it could take me who knows how long. So however you choose to do it, that's totally up to you. The biggest piece of advice that I can give you is to be upfront with whatever that process is. If you're only going to give 3 images, make sure they know that up front. If you're going to pick them for them, make sure they know that up front. You want them to know what they're getting into before they work with you. Because if they go through the shoot and then at the end of it, they're super excited. You're showing them all these pictures. They're like, oh, this one's great. This one's great. This is great. I love it. And then you tell them, well, I'm only going to send you 3. Now things are going to go south. They're going to be like, man, I love all these pictures and you're only going to give me 3 of them. So whatever you choose to do, communicate that up front. Make sure they know and make sure they agree to it and they're okay with it. And then you'll be good from there. And then if you give them extra stuff at the end, that's just a bonus and you look like a rock star. Okay. Let's see. Would you give Instagram models all of the unedited photos from the session? Fail? Never. 0% of the time. Never, ever, 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 ever. And I said that so many times because I want to drill that home. Never, ever, ever. Definitely should not give a collab model all of the unedited photos, period. You just shouldn't do it. Here's a general rule of thumb. Anytime you are delivering anything to a model, whether it is pictures that you're actually delivering to them or pictures that you are giving to them as proofs for them to select the images that they want, never deliver anything to them that you don't want in public, period. And this doesn't have anything to do with you saying don't tag me or you untagging yourself. At the end of the day, if there is an image that you would not want the public to see and associate with you, that image should never be in front of the model's eyes ever. So when I'm going through and I'm calling images to be able to give stuff to the model to pick their selects, it is never, ever 100% of the images that I took at a session. I have went through and I have called through that 3 times. I have an initial call, and then once that's pared down, I do another call, and then once that one's pared down, I do the final call to be able to deliver for them what they can pick. So I may have a session where I took 900 photos. By the time I'm delivering those proofs to the model to be able to make her selects, that 900 has probably been narrowed down to 100. And all 100 of those photos, I would be okay with any of those photos being put on Instagram, social media, anywhere. And that is the best advice I can give. Never, ever, ever give a model something that you don't want out there. Because look, this is the reality. In my contract, it specifically says when it comes to proofs, you can't share them, you can't save them, you can't do anything with them. The sole intent is for you to be able to pick your selects. Contracts are contracts, but it doesn't stop anybody from doing anything. So if there's a picture in there that if that thing got out and my name got associated to it, I would be embarrassed to have my name on it. That falls on me 100%. I never should have had that image out there. And you have to think, anytime you put something on the internet, it's there 100% forever. So only put the stuff out there that you're okay being out there and having your name attached to. So never, ever, ever give 100% of your photos. Just never do it. Never do it. Let's see. Okay. I normally do Zoom FaceTime calls before the shoot just to make them more comfortable and they can get a feel for how I am and the energy I give off. That is a great suggestion. I will tell you, Winston, sometimes that is a little challenging to do because some models just aren't necessarily keen on doing that. Now, even though you would think it wouldn't be a problem because they're obviously going to meet you in person anyway. So you would think it wouldn't be a problem. There have been times where I've kind of recommended that, and the model didn't flat out say no, but they didn't necessarily overly feel comfortable about it. And I don't push that because I don't think that it's necessary per se. It definitely helps. Um, and that's where my YouTube helps. People can kind of do the same thing. So I do think the Zoom FaceTime calls helps, but not every model is receptive to it right in the beginning. Sometimes you got to have more communication. Sometimes they just would rather show up and just kind of see how it goes. That sounds weird. Trust me, I know it sounds weird because it's simple to just do a Zoom FaceTime call, especially when they're going to meet up with you in person anyway. But sometimes they just don't feel comfortable, and you really have to know how to read the room. If they don't feel comfortable, you kind of have to tailor your approach to what's comfortable for them. So Smell Good said with man, I could put these on the screen. I completely forgot about that, but um, let me do it for this one. With model agencies, I learned that if you do test shoots for new models to the agency who wants to build their portfolio, they call it development. But if you want experience, understand it's different. Okay, so that makes sense. I would be curious to know, Smell Good, what is the how do you go about doing test shoots with modeling agencies? Do you reach out to that modeling agency and say, "Hey, do you have any new models that I can do test shoots for?" I would love to know the process because I would more than likely capitalize on that because there's a couple big modeling agencies here that are very highly regarded. So I would definitely entertain that, but I don't know the process with that. So if you could put down there kind of some information that you know of how that works, I would greatly appreciate that. Phil, what's going on? What's going on? And folks, trust me, I'm gonna get to these paid models. I'm just trying to get to these comments first. So definitely sit tight because you would think that my experience with the paid models would have been different, but you would be wrong. You would be wrong. You'd be wrong if you think that. And I was surprised. Would it make sense to make an IG story and save it to your profile, just introducing who you are and what you're about? Chris, I think that is a great suggestion. I've never thought about that, but I do think that's a great suggestion. Um, Fell, you let them choose. Yep, I agree. Ike, what's happening, my man? Yeah, Ike needs to launch that modeling agency, right? Make it easier. Raw file and footage stay with me. Bryce, I agree. Fell, let's see. Very true. Learned that lesson recently. A model expected me to fully edit 30 because she booked the studio, so now I let them choose. Now, Phil, that's interesting because if I had a model that booked and paid for a studio, I'm going to be more likely to bend over backwards for that person because if a model is coming out of her pocket to spend money to do a photo shoot with me and there's no cost associated with me, I do feel an obligation to give them above and beyond what I would typically give a standard model. Now, if my number is usually 6 to 8, 12 to 15, if the thing goes really well, if a model booked a studio for me, I'm within reason. I'm probably going to give the model as many images as they want because I think that's a pretty large gesture to book a studio. I mean, even your cheapest studios is still a decent amount of money for a model. So I would be more prone to let them kind of get whatever they want. Now, maybe I wouldn't edit them to the degree that I typically would edit photos. And by that, I mean, when I do client photos, I mean, I'm cleaning up the smallest of details, things that you wouldn't necessarily notice if I didn't toggle before and after, but it really has an impact on the overall image. I probably wouldn't do that if I was having to deliver 30 images, But if a model's booking me a studio, I'm going to take care of her for sure. Um, let's see if I did that, I would be cutting into Instagram's business model, and I'm not trying to bite the hand that feeds me. That's a good point, man. I don't get paid anything from Instagram because I don't post enough, so I wouldn't have to worry about that. But yeah, learn that lesson recently. Let them know up front how many they're getting. Yes. So as like I said, you always have to let them know up front, because the problem is if you don't, and they're thinking that they're getting 30, you were thinking 12, it just creates a very awkward situation. And more than likely, you're never going to work with that model again. And that model is never going to recommend other models. And if you reach out to a model and they know that model and they hit them up to vet you, they're going to be like, don't work with Fel. So you always want to be upfront. Like, I always want to make sure, my general rule of thumb is I want to give, if I'm doing a collab, I want to give them as much information upfront as possible so that they can make the most informed decision. I don't want there to be any surprises. I don't want there to be anything that they were like, man, if I would have known that, I wouldn't have did the shoot. I never want that. So I want to give them as much information up front. I would rather they decide not to shoot with me and I try to find another model than to kind of just give them half the information. And then by the time the end of it, they're just like, well, shit, I wouldn't have did that if I would have known. So always just be honest and upfront and give them everything. So yeah, what up, MP? Okay, so I think okay, so I've got through all those. So now let's go to this paid model, because this is where I thought from the paid model perspective. And if you follow my channel at all, if you know me, you would know like I've never had a problem paying for models. I wouldn't do it every single time. But you know, when there's certain shoots that you want to get done, you have a specific vision or you have a specific timeline, or you know, whatever the case, sometimes it makes sense to pay for models. And at the end of the day, you can't always expect models to do stuff for free. Now, just a small tangent, and I swear I'm gonna get to this paid stuff, but a small tangent because I think it's super important that photographers, we have to realize, for the most part, when we do collaborations, most of the benefit, most of the value lies with us. At the end of the day, models, unless they are very serious models, they are full-time models, or they are a model that is very serious about getting into the modeling game. Like they are trying to be signed, they're very serious about the game. If it doesn't fall in that range, the photos that we're giving them hold very little value. It's like at the end of the day, if they get those photos, great. But there's not a lot of value. They're not going to bend over backwards. They're not going to come to that shoot when it's inconvenient for them just to be able to get these photos. The value always lies with us. We're getting a lot more from it. We're getting social media images. We're getting portfolio images. For some of us, we're getting YouTube content. We're getting Reels content. We're getting all the value. The models are getting photos that they could take or leave. They don't really care about them. So we always have to understand that, especially like when you're reaching out to these models and you don't necessarily get information, you know, you don't get a hit back, it's because there's nothing in it for them. So when you have a shoot that you're like, I definitely want this shoot to happen. I have this concept, I have this vision, I want to do it on this day, or I want to make it happen. You really just need to pay for a model to make sure that it can happen. Otherwise, you're going to have a headache trying to find someone that can do it. And now, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but I'll mention it now. You definitely have an even harder time when you don't have a large social media following. So again, I have less than 300 followers on my Toglife account. I have maybe 9 actual portraits, and the rest is from when I was doing my black and white landscape stuff. So when I'm reaching out to these models saying, hey, I'm in town, do you want to do a photo shoot? When they come to my profile, they're not really seeing anything that is that enticing for them. They're not seeing followers. They're not really seeing a lot of work. They're not really seeing much that's going to make them say, yeah, I want to work with this person. Now, flip that to somebody that they go to their profile and they got 50,000 followers or 100,000 followers, and they've got 500 posts of, you know, portraits that they've done. models are going to be more likely to respond to them, which is a natural thing because one, they're going to see the following. And at the end of the day, a lot of these females on Instagram, they care about the following numbers. They want more followers. So if they can work with someone that has 50,000 followers or 100,000 followers, they know that that person, that photographer is going to put that image in front of all of those followers. And if the pictures are good and if the model looks good, they're inevitably going to get follows. It happens all the time. How many YouTube videos have you watched of a beautiful model and you immediately went and followed that model? You don't know anything about them, but you saw the YouTube video, they were cute, they had their assets out, and you went and followed them. That's the reality of it, okay? So a lot of these models, they're looking at that. They want to be able to work with someone. If they're going to invest their time and potentially their money, if they're going to get an outfit, use gas, whatever the case may be, they're going to want to say, hey, I want to be able to be in front of a lot of people so I can get followers. And then number two, they want to see the work that you're doing. If your work is crap, they're not going to want to work with you. It's equally the same if you don't have a lot of work on your Instagram. They don't know what they're getting into, so they're not going to be as inclined to want to respond back. So I say all that to say that sometimes when you have a specific shoot in your mind, you have to pay for it, okay? So I had this pool shoot that I wanted to do, and I wanted to do the rain shoot. So I made a point to hire a model for that. We worked through the details, we negotiated the rate. Okay, cool. So fast forward, we get to a point where we establish a date. That date was Monday of this week. We were supposed to shoot at 10 a.m. Monday of this week. Now, initially, we were going to shoot at my hotel pool because it was an indoor pool. And it was a nice one. It was decent. I mean, it wasn't anything great, but it was a nice one. So the original plan was to shoot at the pool at my hotel at 10 o'clock on Monday. Throughout the course of conversation, we ended up switching to shoot at her apartment complex pool because it literally was just 2 minutes away from my hotel. It was an outdoor pool, but the forecast was like scheduled to be like cloudy, some sun coming through. So I didn't worry about the weather, but the pool scene, like it looked better. So the vibe and how the pictures would have looked definitely would have looked better at her complex. Now I was a little bit nervous because I was planning to use flash because since it was cloudy, I knew that light was going to be rather flat. So I was wanting to use flash. I was a little nervous about that, but I'm like, whatever. The pool looks awesome. Even if I had to go natural light, the vibe and ambiance of the pool would have been worth me going natural light versus using my hotel pool. Okay. So I'm supposed to be there at 10 o'clock. Now she messages me at 9 o'clock because I'll be honest, I had reached out to her the night before and I said, is 10 a.m. tomorrow good? She responded back with yes. And then I didn't respond after that, which in hindsight, I should have responded. My thought process was, if I'm reaching out to you and I'm giving you a specific time, if you agree to that, then inevitably like, okay, then that's when we're going to shoot. Like, it wasn't like I was like, hey, what time works best for you? And then you're like 10 and then I never respond. It's like if I say is 10 good and you say yes, the average person would imply that by you saying yes, that means that we're on for 10. But whatever, I didn't respond. So she hit me up at 9 o'clock that next morning and she said, are we still shooting today at 10? I responded back and I said, yes, I'm packing up my stuff now. See you soon. This was at 9:12 that I responded. Okay. So I get to her place at 9:50. Of course, I want to get there early. I want to make sure I'm on time, all of that good stuff. I've scrambled to get the model release together. I got that sent over to her to be signed because I wasn't going to pay her until after the shoot. And I wasn't going to pay her until she signed my model release. And the reason for that was, number one, I wasn't going to pay till after the shoot just to make sure that she showed up and that she actually did what I hired her to do. But I also wasn't going to do it until she signed the model release, because without the model release, I legally couldn't do much with the photos. Yeah, I could post them to social media, but if I'm paying for a model, that's definitely something that I would eventually want to land on my portfolio. And legally, I need a model release for that. So the last thing I want to do is pay someone money. And typically when you're paying models, you're using Cash App, you're using Venmo, or you're using Zelle. And all three of those, it's not as easy to get your money back if something goes awry. If I was able to pay with a credit card, it'd be no problem. I would just dispute it and all could be good. But when you're paying with the Cash App, the Venmo, the Zelle, those are kind of things that you typically, like, they stress that you only send money to people you know, because unless it's an extenuating circumstance, it's hard to get your money back. So because of that, I wasn't going to pay any money until I had that signed model release, so that way I was good to do what I needed to do. So I scrambled to get all that done before I left the hotel. I had all my stuff packed up the night before, so I was good to go, grabbed everything, rushed out the door, went 2 minutes around, so I'm there. So I get there, I send her a message, because I actually tried to exchange contact information, because I'm not very quick at responding to Instagram. Sometimes, like, I don't have notifications, so I just have to check the app to see if I have stuff. So I tried to exchange phone numbers, which 95% of the models that I work with are totally fine with that. And since I have a business line, I always give my business number. And so I don't really worry about that too much, like giving that number out. Like, it's a public number, people can see it regardless. So I'm not concerned about giving that number out. She didn't seem too on board with that. So of course I didn't pressure. It's like, okay. So I get there and I send her a message and I say, hey, I'm here. This is where I'm at. Where do I need to go? And this is where things started to really break down, and it got unprofessional and weird. So number one, it was kind of taking her a little bit of time to respond to me, which I thought was weird because we were supposed to shoot at 10. So I was thinking that even though I was doing the Instagram messaging, it was still going to flow relatively quickly, because she should have, like, been waiting for me in essence. So I sent that initial message, and it took like 5 minutes for her to respond. And the response was essentially, both doors are unlocked, just come into the building. Now, I grew up in Columbus. I know a lot about Columbus, but I don't know anything about this apartment complex. In fact, this apartment complex wasn't there when I moved out of Columbus. So I'm just like, that doesn't really help me at all. So I respond back and I'm like, well, I don't really know this building. I sent a picture of exactly where I was at. She's like, well, the street that you came down, yeah, just go in either one of those buildings. They both have a pool. Again, that didn't really help me, but I'm like, let me do my due diligence and try to drive around and see what I can find. So I find a parking garage. I go into that garage. First thing I look to see if I had to pay to get in there, because I'm like, I'm not paying to go in this garage and then, like, things fall apart. So it didn't even have like a gate ticket thing. So I was like, okay, cool. So I pull in, I message her and I say, hey, I'm in the garage. Is it okay for me to park in here? Because it could have been like a permit only, anything like that. Again, it's taking her time to respond to me. Now, by this time, it's probably like 10:10-ish, right? And it's like taking her 2, 3, 4 minutes to respond to these messages, which is kind of annoying me, because I'm like, we were supposed to shoot at 10. Like, what's going on? So she eventually responds back, and it's just like, yes, like, all of her responses are very short. And I'm like, this is not really helping me at all. So I grab my stuff out. I walk out the garage. I'm by the leasing office. I'm kind of looking around, and I'm like, I message her again. Okay, this is like, where do I go from here? She's like, where are you at? I say, I'm by the leasing office. She's like, okay, you can go in that building, or you can go in the building across the street. They both have pools. And then she messaged after that, the one across the street is probably better. And again, I'm like, this isn't really helping me. Like, I am in a location that I don't know where I'm at, number one. Number two, I am paying you as a model. Like, you are telling me that you are a full-time model. This is what you do as a career. Here is a photographer that is here to do a shoot with you, someone that doesn't know where he's supposed to go, nothing. So I'm doing my best to try to keep things going, because I really did want to do this shoot. It's like, even though I'm paying for it, it's like, I really did want this shoot to happen. This was one of the main shoots that I wanted to make sure I got in while I was in Columbus. So I walk in, and of course I'm nervous, because it's like, I don't even know where I'm going. It's like, I always tell myself, just act confident when you walk into a place and nobody will know any different. But it's like, I walk in And, there's a gym over here, there's coffee, there's people sitting here. And I'm trying not to draw attention to myself because I didn't want people to know that I was there to do photography because I didn't want us to get kicked out of the pool. Okay. So I was trying to be low key so that way, I wasn't drawing any attention. So I walk in and I literally walk around and I'm like, I don't know where to go. So at this point, I'm frustrated. It's probably 10:30. I'm getting frustrated. I walk back out. I message her and I say, you are either going to have to meet me or you're going to have to tell me exactly where to go. I don't know this building. Telling me to come inside is not enough. Like at this point, like I was just very frustrated because it's like, I've invested my time. This was on my calendar. It's like, I'm willing to pay you money to do this shoot. Like, this is just ridiculous. So she responds back and she's like, again, where are you at? I tell her, I take pictures. I'm here. She's like, okay, go in, go to the coffee machine, go right. So I do that. I go right and there's the pool. Okay, I see the pool. Problem is, I can't get to the pool because you got to have a key card to get out the door to get to the pool. So I message her again. Again, this is where it would have been easier to either do some sort of video call or a phone call. Now, throughout the course of this conversation, she was telling me that she was getting ready. Now, that irked me because it's like, you knew the shoot was supposed to start at 10. So how are you still getting ready when we should have been shooting at 10 o'clock? So I messaged her and I'm like, I'm at the pool, but I can't get out because I need a key card. Her response, again, a little bit delayed, was 1 second. I'm on my way. So it eventually got to the point of being 10:45. And at that point, I called the shoot because for me, professionalism is very, very, very important. Okay. And it's like, if I am paying you money to do a shoot and we have communicated about this shoot, I have sent you a sample model release to make sure you're cool with it. I've sent you a mood board to make sure you're cool with it. We've talked about the concept. We've come up with a date. We've come up with a time. We've come up with a dollar amount. We've done all of these things. For me, it then becomes principle. It's like, if you can't respect my time enough, and I am trying to pay you money, this isn't just a collab that we were doing. I am hiring you to do a job. I am paying you money. At the point that it was 10:45, I was just like, I'm done. I'm out. Like mentally, I was no longer in it. I knew that I was going to be frustrated. I knew that I wasn't going to get the shots that I wanted. And I knew that it's like, I'm not paying my hard-earned money for someone that can't even respect my time to be on time when I'm coming to the place that you live at. It would be different if like she was meeting me somewhere far. I'm literally at your apartment complex and 45 minutes later, you're still not there. So I bailed on that shoot. I was respectful in the text. I basically just said, with all due respect, it's now 45 minutes after our scheduled start time. This is impacting other commitments that I have for the day. So I'm canceling the shoot. I appreciate your willingness to work with me. And her response was, okay, I'm sorry, which is a bit cold in my opinion for someone that it's like, it's all your fault. Like, I've been here for an hour and you haven't come through. V Smith, I see your thing real quick. Why not call her? I didn't have her number. She did not feel, I'm assuming she did not feel comfortable exchanging numbers because I offered that. Because that's, for me, that's the easiest way to communicate. I would rather just have a phone call or a video call. I know some people aren't too keen on the video calls, so I always offer my number and try to do a phone call just so that way we can easily communicate versus sending messages. But she was not comfortable with that. I referenced it and she changed the subject. So I'm like, okay. Infinite was up. Take Keys was up. Mozman was happening. So at that point, I bailed on the shoot, and I was very disappointed because out of all the shoots that I wanted to do during that trip, that was the one that I really wanted to do. I spent a lot of time getting my mood board together. I spent a lot of time coming up with concepts in my mind. I was trying to come up with things that, I spent a lot of time on Pinterest so that I could come up with things that weren't everything that was on Pinterest. I was trying to come up with, all of these things that were like different and professional, and it was going to bring a fresh look. She didn't have any images like this on her Instagram, so I just thought that it would work. Now, let me backpedal. When I initially reached out to her, I asked if she had any interest in shooting. She said, yes, I do. Is this going to be a paid shoot? At that point, I responded back with what I had mentioned to you guys earlier in this live. I responded back and I said, when I work with models, I do it one of two ways. I either do a collab, and they typically will get 6 to 8 images, sometimes 10 to 12, depending upon how long the shoot is, or I will pay the model, but if I pay the model, I don't guarantee any images. And I said, I'm fine with either. And that's when she came back and said, I'm a full-time photographer, so I would rather have it paid. That's totally fine. And then at that point, that's where, we started talking rates, we did our negotiations, and everything went fine. So for me, it just was very unprofessional. And I think even though, she messaged me at 9 to make sure that things were still going on, and I responded back at 9:12. In my opinion, 45 minutes was enough time for her to get ready. And if it wasn't, the thing for me was that she knew and I knew, we both knew that I was only 2 minutes away. Okay, so at 9:50, when she realized, I'm assuming she didn't even start getting ready, would be my guess, because I don't know how 40 minutes later she could still not be ready. So my guess is at 9:50, she didn't even start getting ready. She could have just messaged me at 9:50 and said, I need more time, instead of having me come there and then waste my time. So I basically killed that. Like at that point, I was just like, it's not about the shoot anymore. It's about principle. And it's like when I am paying my money to someone, whether it's a model, a restaurant, an establishment of any sort, I have a certain level of expectation of the service and respect that I want to get. It's like when I'm getting something for free, I kind of have to be in the confines of what that is and how I'm getting it for free. But it's like, if I'm paying you money, imagine you're going to a restaurant and you're paying money and your server is treating you like crap, or your waiter, your server is very disrespectful, or your food is very cold, or it's not made the way you want it. You have a certain expectation of how those things should go when you're paying your money, versus if you just go to a restaurant and they're giving you food for free. If the food's not that great, well, it's free. So I got to take what I can get. So for this, it's like, if I am paying you as a model, there's a certain level of expectation and professionalism that I expect. So I bailed on that shoot. So that was that paid shoot. I had another paid shoot that I wanted to do. There was a woodsy area right behind my hotel that was really cool. And so I wanted to be able to get a shoot in there as well. And I thought, I'm going to pay for this model also, because again, it was just one of those shoots that it's like, I wanted to make sure that it would happen. And at that point, I had so many models that either hadn't responded or they did respond, but then when I tried to work through the details, like nothing came from it. There were so many of those that I was just like, okay, I need content, because towards the middle of the week, I was so far behind on the content that I wanted to get from the trip that I was just like, this is going to be a waste of me. Because like, I didn't have to be there for a week. Like, my buddy's surprise party was on Saturday. I literally could have just flew in for the weekend, but I made a whole week out of it, mainly because I was worried about the flight cancellation. But a bigger piece was that I was like, okay, I'll go to Columbus and I'll just use that as an opportunity to just make content. So that way I was still doing work. I would still do things that benefited my business. So I wanted to, at that point, I was like, I want to make sure I start to get some content in. the shoot with the one chick that I was going to do 2 shoots for, those were gone. So now I had the budget for those that I had already set aside for the trip. So I'm like, I got money to throw now, and I wasn't in Vegas, but I don't gamble anyway. So I was like, okay, bet I got this money burning a hole in my pocket. Like, who can I throw it to? Let's do these shoots. So I reached out to another model. This time I was specifically looking for models that either mentioned that they were signed to an agency, or it was models that specifically had DM to book or something of the sort in their profile, so that I knew that they were paid models. So I found one that I liked. I commented, she hit me back. We kind of had some dialogue going on. We had something set up. At the end of it, she ended up having to bail. Now, I won't get into the details of what the reason was, but I will say it was one of those reasons where I'm just like, I don't know if you're telling the truth or not. I can't say you're lying because I don't know, but I could definitely say it doesn't. It's awful coincidental. I'll say that, like, it's awful coincidental. So at this point, it's like now I have. So by Monday, so by Sunday night, I only did 2 shoots plus the shoot with my god niece. So that was 3 shoots by Monday night. By Sunday night. Monday was the last full day that I had to shoot because I had to turn my rental car in on Tuesday, and then it was my sister's birthday, and that was my last day in Columbus. So I basically had through Monday. So by Sunday night, I only had 3 shoots. Now, going into the trip, by Sunday night, I was planning to have 6 or 7 shoots under my belt. 2 of those were going to be paid shoots, and then 4 to 5 of those were going to be collab shoots that I had already kind of worked on before I went to Columbus. And coming into it, like, I was like super excited, thinking like I'm going to get a ton of content. I was going to have pictures. I was going to have YouTube content. I was vlogging. I was doing all this stuff. I was super excited come Thursday. Come Monday, Sunday night, 3 shoots. And only 2 of them really counted because my god niece, that was a given, right? So come Monday, I was honestly like in desperation mode because I wanted to try to get as much content from this trip as I possibly could. Like, I wanted to capitalize on it. The weather was good, in terms of like Vegas, like, obviously like it's sunny, but it's always hot. So it's a little bit harder to do things outside. So I had the benefit of having, Midwest weather where the weather was good. It wasn't hot. We were getting some rain, that sort of thing. So I was like, I want to capitalize this on as much as I can. So on Monday, I was throwing Hail Marys. I was reaching out to people. I was reaching out to people that had ghosted me, and I was like, yo, I'm having a disaster of a time in Columbus right now. Like, I will pay you if you come out and do a shoot. Like, I just need to get some shoots in. Like, at this point, I was desperate because I just wanted to get in as much content as I can. So even in doing that, there were so many people that I had messaged and we had back and forth messages with that it would be hours before I would get a response from them, if I even got a response at all. I was not getting responses from anybody. And I mean, when you're throwing out money, I'm literally like, I had shoots that I was going to pay for that have canceled. I will pay you to do a shoot. I was even saying, I don't care what kind of shoot it is. I don't care where it is. I don't care what kind of shoot it is. I'm like, I just want to get some shoots in. I need content. I will pay you. Still wasn't getting any hits back. And these were people that, like, I had already been talking back and forth. Like, they had already agreed to do shoots already. And then it just kind of fizzled. And it's like, I wasn't getting anything. So my biggest thing was I was trying to get a shoot in at the hotel because, again, not even on no freak stuff, not on no boudoir stuff. The light was amazing in this hotel room. Like, it was a great hotel room. And I'm like, I got to get a shoot in here before I leave. So I eventually reached out to someone that I had shot to before, and we had agreed to do a boudoir session. Now, where it kind of sucked was that she had to work that day, so she wasn't going to be able to come over until 7. So I wasn't going to be able to get like that beautiful light, but I was like, it is what it is at this point. If I could shoot anybody today, like that's great. Let me get what I could get. So we were like, cool, come whenever you can. We'll make some dope content. She wanted to bring someone with her. I'm like, I have no problem with that. That's totally cool. So I at least had that one. Then I had another model that had hit me up, and she was like, I should be free after 6. Now at this point I hit her up and I was like, that should worries me, because I'm like, I've had so much stuff fall through this whole trip that I'm like, you saying should, I'm like, I don't know. So then she responded back and she's like, yeah, I probably shouldn't say should, there was all this stuff. So, but I was kind of like hopeful that that would come through, because she really wanted to shoot. In her defense, she did have 2 kids that she's raising by herself. So I understand how that goes. Like, it's like sometimes you have all intent on doing things and your kids can completely change that whole game. So I don't hold that against her at all. But at the same time, like, I did kind of have like this hope, like when you in desperate mode, the way I was on Monday, everything you get, like you kind of get your hopes up and you like, I really hope this comes through. I hope this comes through. So Monday, the pool shoot didn't happen. So boom, that one was done. I hit up another model that responded back right away. And I'm like, yo, I'm free between noon and 5. Do you have any availability to shoot? She responded back right away. Yes. So that like got my heart. Boom, 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 boom. All right, cool. I can at least get this midday shoot in. So then I respond back and I'm like, yeah, I got this idea and this idea. If you're not cool with that, I'm fine. We could do whatever. We could meet wherever. Crickets. Crickets. Didn't hear a thing. So I'm like, this was somebody that I definitely knew was going to stay consistent with the responding back, but it was crickets. I heard nothing. I messaged her at like 9 something, like right before my 10 o'clock shoot that was supposed to happen. And then after that, I hit her up at like 11 and I'm like, yo, that shoot just got canceled so I could shoot anytime. Hour goes by, 11, 12, 1, 2, 2:30. So I messaged her at 2:30 and I'm like, I mean, I guess you don't want to shoot, but I'm at this point, I'm super desperate. So, if there's any way you could shoot today, please let me know. So on Monday, probably like Monday afternoon, the boudoir shoot that I was supposed to do at 7, or it actually would have been like at 8. She messaged me and she was like, hey, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to make it. I'm trying to be respectful of my boyfriend and he doesn't feel comfortable with the shoot. Now, of course, I'm 100% fine with that, right? Like that didn't hurt my feelings at all. But by this point, I was so mentally exhausted. I mean, everything fell apart on Monday. Like I had not a single shoot happen on Monday because literally everything, I was supposed to have had 4 shoots on Monday alone. Every single one of them fell through. Every single one of them. And so at that point, I was just like crazy, mentally exhausted. I'm just like, this has just been a hell of a trip. Like Columbus has sucked more than I ever would have thought it was. Like nobody was coming through. So at that point, again, I got this money burning a hole in my pocket. So I'm offering money to everybody. I'm like, yo, I'm trying to get this shoot in. I'll pay you like, what, hey, if you can come through, you're gonna make this money. Because again, at that point, now I'm at the end of my trip and I'm only basically, I was actually 3 shoots in. I had did a shoot Monday morning at this or Sunday morning at this nature preserve. So I was 3 shoots in. But mind you, like I said at the beginning, my plan was to get 8 shoots in by the end of the trip. So I'm 3 in and I'm approaching the end. So come Monday, I'm throwing money at everybody. I'm like, I don't even care. Like, come get it. But, they had to be, I was looking for people that had some sort of modeling experience. Like I wasn't going to be just throwing money to somebody to just be Instagram modeling. Like I wanted somebody that had some experience, because by then I was so exhausted. I'm like, I don't even want to put in work to do a photo shoot. Like I want somebody to just show up that know what they're doing. I'll pay you this money and then everything can be good. So I'm hitting up people. I'm going into the hashtags Columbus models. I'm messaging people. I'm DMing people. I'm throwing money out left and right. I'm not getting no responses. A couple people responded and they were like, I would love to shoot, but I'm busy, or I would love to shoot, I'm not in town. You know, how long you in town for? So I got a lot of those responses where people were like, I would love to shoot, but I'm just not available right now. So then that's when I put the story out on my Instagram. Some people might have saw that because at that point I was as desperate could be. Because again, it's like I didn't need the pictures, obviously, but it's like I literally stayed in Columbus for that amount of time just to get content. That was the only reason that I stayed that long. So I'm like, I'm not trying to go home and not have this content. So so I threw that out and I got a few hits off of that. Again, there was people that hit me back that wasn't even available to shoot on Monday. I don't know why so many people reached out to me and they literally weren't in town or they weren't even available to shoot. It didn't make any sense. Like at that point, I'm like, this is crazy. But I had one person hit me back and she wanted to shoot. She was down to do the boudoir shoot. But the problem with that was that number one, like I said, I was mentally exhausted. I'm just like, I don't feel like really having to do any kind of work. But, you know, I was in a state of desperation. So I'm like, all right, I agreed to it. Now, the bigger issue was that she wasn't a model. That's not what she did. She didn't model. She really had never modeled. So I'm just thinking like, okay, this is going to be interesting. And then she was a curvier girl, right? Now, typically with boudoir stuff, if you're good at boudoir, if it's something that you do often, you can work with every body type. Okay. And as photographers, we typically should be able to work with every body type. But I'm always honest with myself, with my strengths, with my weaknesses. And when it comes to boudoir, I can't sit here and say that I'm strong at doing boudoir with more curvy women because I don't work with a lot of curvy women in that type of photography. So when she hit me back, I'm just thinking like, man, I want to do it just because it's like I can get a photo shoot in. But then there was a part of me that was just like, I'm so exhausted. I don't want to have to think this is going to be a nightmare for me because I'm not going to really know what I'm doing. And I'm tired. And she's never really did modeling. So she's not going to know anything, how to pose, any of that stuff. But I agreed to it anyway because I'm just like, I just want to get a shoot in. So she comes and I battle through doing the shoot. Like I'm not even going front. And if she ever watches this, I swear on my life, like it wasn't you, it was me. And I know that's like the biggest cop out, and it's like bullshit. Like don't say that. But I'm dead serious. Like it was me. By then, it was she got there at like 4:30. I was gone. I was gone. Like I was getting very little sleep every night because I was doing trying to do photo stuff. I was backing things up. I was working on stuff. I was doing work. There was some nights where I had, things that I had to go to outside of photography. So I was getting very little sleep every night anyway. And then just being East Coast, West Coast, time difference, all that. So come Monday, 4:30, I was exhausted mentally, physically from a photography standpoint, but I'm just like, all right, let me try to do this. But it was a disaster for me because she didn't really know how to pose. She really needed a lot of direction. And where my head was at, I was just not doing a good job of giving that direction. So you can imagine trying to do a boudoir session with a curvier woman with someone that needs direction and you're not able to really give direction. It was a recipe for just not a good shoot. Now, I was able to get some content from it, but my hit ratio was significantly lower than what it normally was. So I did that shoot. I muscled through it. I checked my phone. One of the other chicks that I had messaged earlier in the day that would take 5-6 hours to hit me back, she finally hit me back. She hit me back at like 6:30 and was like, because I had hit her up and threw her money and was like, yo, if there's any way you could do a shoot today, please do. I need a win. So she hit me back at like 6:30. I didn't see it till 8. Now by then I knew I had effed up. I knew I had effed up. Like I had old dude from the movie sitting across the table, like, you know, you done effed up, right? Because I knew I wasn't getting no response back, like after taking that long. But I hit her back anyway. I'm like, you know, sorry it took me so long to respond. You know, I would love to shoot with you because she said she could be ready by 9. I hit her back at 8. And I'm like, you know, hey, if you could be ready by 9 to shoot wherever, whenever, I don't even care. Is your Zelle set up? Blah, blah, blah. Now, I knew I wasn't going to get no hit back. I knew because it would take her hours to hit me back anyway. So I knew like I missed that. And I think even if I would have responded when she first hit me up, I wasn't gonna do that. So by the end of Monday, old girl leaves, and I literally just sat outside the hotel, and I was just like, Columbus has been the worst city that I've ever been to in terms of model creation and just, you know, trying to reach out to models and get stuff. And I felt like, you know, I threw everything at it. You know, it's like even to the point where it's like you're trying to pay models and you can't even get models that you're paying to be professional. It left a terribly sour taste in my mouth. Like, I don't know that I would ever go back to Columbus to try to do content creation ever again, because it, all in all, it just was a complete waste of time. And it's like at the point where you're trying to pay for models and you still can't get something, it's like, I don't know. Now, Ike, interesting thing to talk about going to the strip club with that money. And I know you might have been saying that as a joke, but I'm going to touch on it and give it a serious answer on why I wouldn't do that just because I want to. When it comes to like boudoir stuff, one of the struggles that I had with the girl that I did it with, who again was not a model, she's really never modeled. This was just something that she always wanted to do. The thing that she kept going to was kind of the more overly sexual type poses. So like hands on the titties, hands on the vaginal area, the things that you would think a stripper would do. I'm not saying she a stripper. So if you're watching this, I'm not saying you was doing stripper shit. I'm just saying the things that you would think a stripper would naturally go to, that's what she was doing. And that's not the look that I typically like. That's not the look that I'm going for in boudoir, because I don't like the boudoir that comes off like overly sexually. Like I want the, you know, it's your girlfriend, you walk into the room, she's feeling hot and sexy, and that vibe that she gives off. That's what I like to do with boudoir. So when it comes to like the strip club, that would be my reason for not wanting to go there, because I feel like that would be the first thing that they would go to, is just that stripper mentality of just like all the raunchiness and all that stuff. But again, I know you was probably just saying that tongue in cheek, but I did want to mention that because it is a good point to do if you got money that you're willing to throw out to have somebody model. A stripper would be somebody that you would think like, yeah, just hit up a stripper. They'll definitely come through for you. But that's why I wouldn't. So yes, moral of the story, as Ike said, Columbus is trash in terms of trying to find dope models. I agree with that 100%. And to his point in that as well, when I thought about it, when I was in Columbus in October, when I met up with Ryan and T-Mid and SJ, we equally had a hard time finding models in Columbus. And I want to say that I think money was being thrown at those models as well. And we equally had a hard time. So I do feel pretty confident in saying Columbus is not the spot for models. And I will probably not go back there to ever do content creation stuff ever. So yeah. Okay, so I had, let me see if I touched on everything. I plan to pay for models. Did those shoots work out? Is there anything that I would do differently next time around? The answer is honestly no. Like, I feel like throughout the course of the week, I tried everything. I literally tried everything. Like the only thing I didn't really do was go through a modeling agency. And the reason why I didn't do that was just because it would have been more expensive. That just wasn't in my budget for that trip. Like I'm not going to Columbus in spending modeling agency money. I didn't have a shoot and a concept that would justify that cost. So I didn't go through with the modeling agency. No, I probably would have had good success if I would have done that, but it would have cost me. And I really wasn't trying to pay for most of the shoots. I was really trying to just do collabs. So I didn't go that route, and I didn't go to the strip club. But outside of that, no, I don't think I would have done anything different. Like I tried everything I could, and it's like it isn't even like I never got any responses back from people. Like you get to a point where you literally have back and forth, and then the minute that you try to start nailing down the details, when are we actually going to do the shoot, what day or what time are you available, that's where things start to fall apart, and you realize that it's just like clearly like they weren't serious. What was even the point of even responding? So yeah, definitely wouldn't. And I wanted to leave it with this. I know most of us in here are photographers, but I just wanted to leave it with this just so if a model happens to see this, or for you photographers, if you want to mention this to models that you know, I want models to understand that when a photographer reaches out to try to do a photo shoot, at the point that you agree to do that photo shoot, the ball is in motion and we are putting things in place. Like we are investing time into trying to make that photo shoot happen in multiple ways. So number one, let's say I reach out and I say I want to do, now I was going to pay for the pool shoot, but let's just use that as an example. Let's say I reach out and I'm like, hey, I want to do a pool shoot. Are you down? They come back and they say yes. Immediately, you're doing your homework to try to find what pool you want to work at. You're looking at the weather to see what day makes sense. You're kind of looking at, okay, what time of day makes sense? What lenses do I want to use? Do I want to use natural light? Do I want to use flash? There's all these things that you're thinking about. And in the meantime, you're really not trying to book anything else because you're trying to make that work. Now, I want to touch on that because I feel like some people will be like, well, why didn't you just try to set up multiple stuff? So then that way, if someone fell through, you had a backup plan. And that's a great question. And that's why I want to touch on it. The reason I didn't do that is because I ultimately did not want to burn bridges. I didn't want to try to set something up with person A and then also try to set something up with person B, and then they both come through and then I have to cancel on person B. Because then at that point, if now tomorrow I need another model, I'm gonna go back to person B, they're gonna remember that I just canceled on them yesterday. So for me, that's just not the approach that I wanted to take. Like, I don't want to set up multiple stuff and then have to cancel on people because that's just kind of unnecessarily burning the bridge. So I would rather see what's happening with this. And then if it's going to work out, assumingly, then okay, cool. I'm not going to try to plan nothing else. Or if I'm over here working on this and they're like, yeah, no, I can't do it that day or it's not going to work. Okay, cool. Now I could go over here. So I just wish that models would understand that it's like when they commit, it's not like we just sitting back and just not doing anything and we just like, okay, well, if it happens, it happens, especially when it's not our city. If I was in Vegas, it wouldn't have been as big of a deal because if I'm in Vegas, I'm still going about my normal daily routine anyway. So it's not a huge deal. But it's like when I'm in another city and I've got a short amount of time and I'm trying to get this content in, I don't have the luxury of just you let me know whenever you're available. It's like, no, like I need to shoot on Tuesday. Are you available to shoot on Tuesday? So I want models to understand this. Like if you're not 100% sure, don't commit. Just be honest and just be like, yeah, that sounds good. I don't know that I can commit to it this week. I'll let you know. But if you want to try to plan something else, that's cool too. I would appreciate that 100% because then at least if I got that response and I plan something else, I could hit that model back and just be like, yeah, this one was a definite, so I'm going to roll with this one. But if you're available at some point else this week, let me know. And the relationship is good all around. But it's like when a model hits you back and they're like, yeah, I want to shoot. And then you try to work through the details and then you find out that they're not even in the same state on the day that you're trying to shoot. It's like, what was the point of saying, yes, I'm down to shoot? Like that got my hopes up and wasted my time when you could have just been like, yo, I would love to shoot, but I'm out of town right now. If you ever back in town, hit me up. So models just got to understand that it's like when you commit to doing a shoot, there is things that we start doing and it's a waste of our time and energy when you don't have any intent on committing to that shoot, or you don't know for sure if you want to commit to the shoot, you wasting our time. So just don't do that. Like, just don't commit to it. Let's see. Things one of let's see, let's put this up. I'll read this. One of the things I realized after starting my YouTube and traveling is where you live and your environment plays a huge role in the kind of content you create. I am successful because I live in a state with a lot of affluent, beautiful people, good, beautiful scenery, good point. Very good point. Which one am I missing down there? Yeah, so Charles Ike he's in Tacoma, which is a very valid point for sure, you know. And it's like, so going back to someone's point, smell good, when you're like, LA got all the models for you. Now that's an interesting thing too, because smell good, believe it or not, LA, they do have a lot of models, but LA has a lot of wannabe models that you definitely would have to pay for, unless you're either in a circle where you just have access to these models and they're willing to work for free, or you just are in the right place at the right time and you manage to find them. Outside of that, you have to pay for them. And a lot of them, because I've done research into it and I've been to events and parties and talked to some people, a lot of them think that they're worth way more than they really are. Because the problem in LA is that LA is all about money and looks. And so you will have a lot of women that look amazing in LA, but because of those looks, they use those looks to get things from men that have a lot of money that essentially just want pretty arm candy. So you have men that have money that have no problem paying for these girls just to walk around with them and basically kiss their ass because they have money to blow and they don't care. So these models are used to that type of environment. And so as a photographer like myself, to reach out to these models, well, number one, a lot of them are signed, first of all. So let me backtrack. A lot of them are signed, even if they're not really getting work. Like, there's a lot of agencies in LA in general, and they will sign models, they will sign models even if those models really aren't getting any work. Because again, going back to it, a lot of people in LA, the look is more important than anything else. So for a model to be able to say, I'm signed to XYZ, she could have never gotten a gig from that modeling agency at all. But to be able to say she was signed to it just makes her look good. So a lot of them are signed. And so the money that they're charging for a shoot is crazy. And believe it or not, most of them only have a pretty face. They're not actually good at modeling. And it's like, for me, I don't just want a pretty face. I don't care about just a pretty face. Like, I actually want you to be able to model. I want you to know your angles. I want you to know your posing, all of that sort of thing. So it was never worth it to really pay for most models in LA, because you're really just paying for a pretty face. And that's not worth it for me. For some photographers, that's what they care about. Like, if they just have a pretty face and the model is as stiff as a board, they're okay with that because it's a beautiful model. That's never been me, because to me, that's easy. I can easily go get a pretty face, and I know my lighting and my gear well enough to get a great looking photo. But there's so much more to it than that. So that's never interested me whatsoever. So that's why I never really tapped in on that in LA. So yes, very much so. It wasn't that. That's the best way to put it, RBJ. That's the best way to put it. It was 100% erotica and not boudoir. And I don't want erotica, because, not that there's anything wrong with it. If there's anyone in here that that's their thing, that's fine. That's just not for me. Like, for me, when it comes to boudoir, I'm more a t-shirt and panty kind of guy, because I've always found that to be more attractive than someone just in a lingerie outfit. That's just, to me, that's dated. And I just personally don't care for that. So yeah, that's exactly what it was. And because of that, yeah, there just really wasn't a lot of content that I was able to walk away from that. Like I did my best because I'm like, I'm investing the time. I want to at least have something that I can get from this. But it just was one of those things where it's like my head wasn't in the game. You know, she didn't have any experience. So when you combine those two, where the photographer's head's not in it and she doesn't have experience, you're typically not going to get your best work. That's just the reality, and I accept that. So, gotta move this down. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, I agree with that 100%. I like they, you know, that's been the difference between, you know, being in LA and being in Vegas is that, you know, in LA, everybody is about the look, you know, so it's like on any given day, wherever you're at, you're seeing the super slim female with the yoga pants or the yoga shorts and the sports bra, and they look amazing. They look amazing. They're cute. And I mean, you see white girls, you see black girls, you see Asian girls, you see everything. And they're beautiful. They're absolutely beautiful. But that's where it stops. Like if you talk to most of them, they're seriously dumber than a box of rocks. Like you can't even hold any conversation with them at all. Like they only know looks and money. You know, and when it comes to guys, it's like, what can you do for me? And that's about where it stops. So, you know, trying to actually do any meaningful modeling with people like that is almost impossible because they're going to go with the Instagram poses, the things that get them 50,000 likes. That's what they immediately go to because that's what works on Instagram. But as photographers, if you're not the type of photographer that just wants to get the Instagram looks, you're going to struggle with those type of models because they don't know anything else. So it's, you know, it's just frustrating. Um, so, what up, Teal? What up, KJ Ballin? So anyway, that was the gist. I definitely, this was probably longer than I wanted to be, but I wanted to get all of this out. And the main reason why I wanted to do this video was because I wanted to have something out there that really put a realistic view of what it's like to go to a different city and try to get people to work with you. And I wanted to do it from a perspective of someone that doesn't have a big social media following. Like I said in the beginning, you'll still encounter these issues when you have a big following. But when you have a big following, it makes it easier because girls are selfish and they're in it for themselves. And they will always go with someone that has 50,000 followers over somebody that has 300 followers. Like I'm not going to compete with the person that has 50,000 followers because someone that has 50,000 followers, if they post that photo, that model will at least get 100 new people or 200 new people. If I post it, they're not really getting much of anything. They might get 5 or 10. It's not enough. It's not worth their time, right? So if you're like someone that's like me, where it's like you just have a very small social media following or even just a moderate following, these are the struggles that you deal with. And you just have to know that it's like when you go into a city, if you're expecting to do this content, it's going to be hard. It's a grind. And my best piece of advice is it's a numbers game. Now, when I say that, even I was a little nervous because at first I was like, I'm just going to go in and I'll leave comments on 100 people's photos in one day. My fear from doing that, though, was that Instagram was going to penalize me. Like, I don't know where that threshold is, especially because I would copy and paste the same thing because I don't want to sit here and like come up with a new message for everybody that I'm messaging. So I'm copying the same thing. So I was a little nervous at what point Instagram would start saying this is coming off as spam and they like start blocking my stuff or they don't see it. So it was kind of tough. So I tried to limit it to like 5 or 10 accounts per day just to make sure like I didn't hit that spam threshold. But you got to understand, you're not going to get a lot of hits back. And the hits that you do get back, man, a lot of them are going to fizzle. And maybe if it's a different city, if you offer money, they may be more professional. They may be more prone to do it. But I could tell you right now for Columbus, Ohio, it didn't make sense if there was money involved. It didn't make sense about anything. Columbus, Ohio was just not a good city for content creation. And I think that's been proven. And I was actually supposed to meet up with a couple of content creators, Thomas, and I actually never heard. We were supposed to meet up one day, but we had to switch to a different day because I got my schedules mixed up. And then I was waiting to hear back from them, and I never heard from him. And then someone had mentioned meeting up with Ryan, which I did not do that as well. And just to touch on that, because over time, and I'm going to leave it with this, and there isn't any drama, but I do want to touch on this publicly because I have gotten a lot of comments over time. And so I do want to quickly touch on something, again, in a very respectful way and not to dive into any kind of details whatsoever. But I do want to touch on something because I've gotten enough questions from it that I've kind of just not really ever touched on publicly because it's just not who I am. But I do want to touch on it in this video just to put it to rest. It's the only time I'm going to talk about it, and then that's that. I have gotten questions on why in the past, I don't know how many months, there has not been any collaboration on either channel between Ryan and myself. And so there would be questions as to why I didn't connect with Ryan when I was in Columbus. And before I answer that question, I definitely want to say that in terms of Ryan and I, there's no beef whatsoever. That's been a question that's been asked. There's no beef whatsoever. I think that Ryan is a great photographer. I think that he is a great person. So there's no beef whatsoever. The way that I will answer that question with very much respect, and like I said, I'm not going to dive too deep into it, and I'm going to leave it at this. The way that I will answer that question is that the way that I've always lived my life is that I understand that sometimes you will meet people that simply aren't the best fit for your life. It has nothing to do with that person. It doesn't mean that that person is a bad person, but I truly believe in my heart that everybody that we come across in life isn't meant to be in our life for the rest of our lifetime. Like sometimes people come into your life and they serve a very meaningful purpose. They help you become a better person, and then they go down their path and you go down your path. It absolutely doesn't ever mean that that person is a bad person. It doesn't mean that something bad has happened. It doesn't mean that there was a big fallout or that there was this drama or that there was this beef. None of that exists between Ryan and I. None of that exists, or at least I can say that from my perspective. None of that exists. It's just a situation where sometimes, in my opinion, paths cross and they just keep going, and that's just the way that it goes. And you can try to do things differently, and it just doesn't always feel natural. That's the reality of it. So I say that with the utmost respect. I've always respected him. I have the utmost respect for him. I have always wished him well. I continue to support him from the sideline. This is not something that I've ever mentioned publicly because I didn't feel that it needed to be mentioned publicly, but I'm mentioning it now because over time I've gotten so many comments and private messages about it. And being in Columbus, people were recommending and asking if I was going to meet up with him. And obviously I didn't. You're going to see that I'm not going to have any contact with him. So I wanted to just address that this time only on this live so that you could hear it from me. Everything is good. Him and I, we saw each other at WPPI. Everything was good, but that just is what it is. Sometimes paths are different, and that's totally okay. It doesn't mean anything bad, so that's what it is. So that is all I will say on that. And on that note, I 100% appreciate you being here. I was trying to keep this to an hour. I think I'm at 2, so I'm definitely going to cut it now, but I wanted to make this to where it can still be informational if somebody watched this in the past. So hopefully you guys have taken something from this. Hopefully I've been able to give you something that helps with your experience when you're trying to reach out to models. And, you know, if you've done something different and you have, you know, suggestions or things that have worked from you, please, please, please go into the comment of this video. Like once it's posted on YouTube, please go into the comment and let me know, because I'm always looking to improve like my approach, and maybe there's something that I could have done different that, you know, yielded better results. So if there's things that you've done or if you have suggestions or whatever, please definitely let me know and I will implement them and see if they work better for me. So with that being said, you guys are the best. I very much appreciate your support. Hopefully you guys are having a great Wednesday. Have a great rest of the week, and I will see you guys soon.